Welcome to the Energy and Hours podcast, formerly called the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill Wright, author of Happy, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, and creator of the Time Magic Seasonal Planner. On this podcast, we talk about time and energy management tips that we can use to flow through our day in a way that feels more aligned. We focus a lot on how to use cyclical energy, seasonal cycles. We talk about productivity. We talk about self-care. We talk about rest. It all comes together in what I like to say is time magic. And if you tune into these episodes week after week, you're going to get a half an hour punch of tools, tips, and strategy advice for you to go and implement right away in your day to make your life feel a little bit more like you and a little bit less stressful. Today is a really fun day. I get to connect with Danielle Baker. Danielle and I both live in the Ottawa area, and we met at a local event that I hosted, the Sip and Connect. And she's a really special person doing a lot of really cool work with parents. I'll let her introduce herself to you guys, but we get ready for a really good conversation today. With lots of tips and insights on how we can step into being the best versions of ourselves. So Danielle, welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Jill, for having me on. And yes, I do remember that day. It was such a great event, and I am looking forward to the other ones as well. It was so great to connect, and with all this, the energy was amazing. But yeah, thank you for having me on. I am Danielle C. Baker. That's how, if you Google me, that's how you will find me. I have quite of an extensive background. I started in science. I do have a degree in physics, and I pivoted over to early childhood education. So quite a broad range there. But my work has always gravitated towards children, even when I was younger. So started really getting interested in child development. Working for a peacekeeping center, they were at the time just introducing rehabilitation for child soldiers at the time. They weren't too sure how to navigate that because that was already traumatizing for the adults to begin with. And this is where I started to notice how delicate childhood development is, or child development is, where we can actually weaponize it. So that's really when the defining moment for me to say, okay, let's turn this into a positive so that we're not weaponizing our children. So started with children, helping them out as much as we can, just pouring in as much love as possible. And then I realized that at the end of the days, I worked in daycares for a good almost 20 years. We're handing them back to parents who are in survival mode. So that this is where my work pivoted, especially after the pandemic or during the pandemic, working with families with children, neurodivergent children specifically. With all this change, it was taking a toll on the parents. So it was just to help the parents so that they can help their child. We keep saying that the parents are the first and best educator for their children. So I wanted to give that power back to the parents, and that's how it all started with my business.
That's amazing. And I think you're
Mhm.
so right. We as parents have a responsibility to learn the things, to help us be regulated and safe, right? To be that role model that we need to be and to handle all the stuff that is modern parenting. But also then to have the skills so that we can pass them down and model them and show the kids so that they can develop those early. So it's sort of like this two-tiered benefit of helping the parents, right? Because you're right, we are in survival mode, especially those of us who have neurodivergent kids and who are working and maybe building businesses and maybe going back to school. And like we're busy, we have full lives. And one thing I wanted to really dive into that we had talked about, you and I, in preparation for this recording, is the lens of self-care and micro wins. Because when
Mhm.
I frame, anyone who's listening is familiar with my framework of time magic, which is productivity, rest, and self-care. And those three things all come together, right? And so let's dive into that idea of self-care, and what do you consider like a micro win? How do we use this idea to really nourish ourselves as the parent?
It is difficult as parents to be able to already make time for ourselves. We're making time for everybody else. So we often go on the back burner and just keep rolling, even when we're at our worst. And we've done that, with high fevers and, just sick and still going and getting everything ready. But I think right now it is important to redefine self-care because it's been commercialized, right? It's a lot of people think self-care, a yoga class, a day at the spa, weekend retreats, which are great. But in our reality now, it is even more stressful. It's like adding an extra thing to our list, adding an extra thing to our expenses. And then we come back and have more to do because we took the weekend off or we took the day off, or while we're there, we're thinking about everything we should be doing at home. So the focus on, I think for me, it's kind of a philosophy in the yoga world where it's the approach through nonviolence, and we often associate that to physical violence, right? But it's in everything. It's our self-talk is how we handle it. So if your self-care is stressing you out, it's not self-care. You're actually still hijacking your nervous system. So you're not going to be able to tone it down and say, hey, I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger right now. I can breathe, and just tone it down a little bit. So for me, self-care is really to make sure where am I feeling tense in my day-to-day? And this is where we need to focus. So those micro wins started with me when I was going through a massive burnout and some issues with family health and things like that. And I was, for the first time in my life, I could feel that I couldn't control it anymore. And I couldn't separate work from home, which is something I was always able to do no matter what stress. I mean, in a daycare environment, it can get really stressful, but now everything was jumbled up together and I could feel that downward spiral. So, um, and then I realized that I was trying to give myself 5 minutes a week, not even a day, 5 minutes a week, and I couldn't get to it. And I was thinking, no, this isn't right. And I know I'm not the only one who does this. So this is where the micro wins were taking 2 minutes in the car, and listening to that extra song in the car so I could just breathe before I go in and just show up a little bit better than already drained. And then just that one time where you were able to uh, not snap at your child right away. That's a micro win to me. So we're so hard on ourselves, but just to highlight the times that we are fully present or we are showing up. That one time where you saw the pile of dishes on the counter, but you decided to have it, sit on the couch with your child and read a book. Those are micro wins. So this is where my focus is now. Is it's so easy to focus on the negative that's going on throughout the day, that so focusing on the positive, to say, hey, I was actually able to laugh with my kid today, this is great. Or I was able to open my eyes. I work with parents who deal with depression, and say I was actually able to open my eyes today. That's a win. So um, we're looking for the results of the marathon, but we need to put our shoes on first. So this is what I focus on: is did you get your shoes on today? It's a good start.
Yes.
Everybody is safe. Everybody was fed this morning. Maybe we showed up at school a little late, but they showed up. Those are all little wins that we were responsible for. That. Tap yourself on the back and say, hey, I did it. We survived another day. That's a win.
Yes. And each of these micro wins is going to be personal to every one of you listening, right? It's like
Yeah.
my micro wins are going to be different than Danielle's, than any of you. And this reminds me, as you're sharing this, about two important pieces of the work that I do too, like recording what I call glimmers. Sounds like the
Yes.
kind of the same thing as a micro win, right? Those moments that you're like proud of, that you take a moment to just recognize, like it might not be heroic or really large in scale, but it's something that we can hold on to and appreciate and acknowledge throughout our time. And then the other piece is, you mentioned like the micro part of that, like, so the glimmers is kind of like the win part. And the micro part is more like using the time confetti that we have, these little pockets of time throughout our day, which my listeners will be familiar with the term. It's like, let's utilize those to get some wins in. So I love this so much. I also know that you have a journal that we can use and sort of integrate all of these ideas into something like really tactical, practical, tangible. Can you talk to us about the journal?
Yes. The journal has just started with how I wanted to change things showing up at the daycare, because we showing up at the daycare, we focus on the big things, the meltdowns, the behavioral issues, or anything big. And so the parents sometimes will come in and they know we have to talk to them, and they're like, what did my child do today? And so I didn't want that. I didn't want, especially if you're a parent who gets those talks regularly. I wanted to switch that over and say, hey, your child did some amazing things today. We're going to focus on that. We know about the big stuff. We're working on that, but let's focus. And then when I pivoted to working with the parents, I realized the parents are kind of doing the same thing. It's easy, or it takes less energy to focus on what's not going right. Right. It's just, so I wanted to switch it over. And because I'm working with helping parents show up the way they actually want to show up as a parent. And that's when I have the journal here. I'm in the process of rebranding, but it's just a little reflection every day where in the morning you start off right away just scanning yourself, do a little scan on your nervous system. Say, okay, how am I feeling today? And then, how do I want to show up today? What's the one thing? If I could accomplish one thing, what is that one thing? And how do I want to feel today? I think it's more the term that I use is, if you had a great day, how would that feel? And then what can I do to make somebody else feel like this today? So again, just to kind of move that away to say one of the best healing method thing to do sometimes is to help somebody else achieve that as well. It helps you. So even if it's just to help your child or an aging parent to feel the same way, or your neighbor that's struggling with shoveling the snow or whatever that looks like, and then start right away. Because I work with parents, is 3 things I appreciate about my child. So start the morning off on a positive note. If you don't have children, of course, it could be with your partner, it could be with your coworker or anything. So what is 3 things that I appreciate? Just to put the focus back on the beautiful things. And then at the end of the day, it's just a reflection of, again, because I work with parents, what did my child do to make me laugh today? And sometimes maybe it's hard sometimes to look at those moments or to find those moments, but even if it was just a chuckle, just like a,
Even if it's
or
an eye
something.
roll,
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes she's like, oh yeah, okay, something that I appreciated. What did they teach me? Our kids are teaching us everything. We don't necessarily notice. Our kids trigger us as well. So our children will mirror back what the parts of us that we need to heal. And so it really is more of a focus on what is a great moment that I had with my child and what am I looking forward to tomorrow. So it's really just the positive stuff. And it's a muscle to work. At first, it's hard when you're always like, so I love
Mhm.
your vocabulary with glimmers and those time of confettis, or those moment of time confettis. I'm a very visual person, so that's all I see right now is like a,
Yeah.
just this golden confetti, and so I love that, and that's what the journal is. I transferred it over to for children as well, especially for neurodivergent children who may be already labeled as difficult at school or within their social circles, so their peer circles. So again, to teach our children to focus on the positive. How's your social battery today, to be able to recognize that, to say, I'm not feeling 100% today, but that's okay, and so then they know what to adjust, what kind of boundaries to set, so that they are staying in a what their nervous system would consider a safe environment.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so wonderful to have this sort of guided process for someone who, especially like as the parent, who's already overwhelmed, and the negativity bias that we all naturally have lends us towards, as you said, it's easier, it's less energy to focus on the negative. It takes a lot sometimes for us to shift our mindset and focus on these things. And so to have the guided prompts, taking us through it, practicing, building that muscle, like you said, every day. And I love that you've got it for kids. I'm for sure going to get a copy for each of my kids because I feel like this is such an important thing to just for them to be aware of, even at a young age, even if they can't like read and write yet by themselves, you can go
Yeah.
through it with them, right? But just being aware of how are you feeling? What is your body telling you? What are all of these different things about you that only you know?
Yeah.
Because as the parent, that's great information to have as well. If you ask your kid, if any parents ever said, like, how's your day? Good, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can use this journal to dive in a little more and get insights into, okay, how my kid is really doing, right?
Yeah, and it does give them the words, because when they're younger, they don't necessarily have the vocabulary to express what they're feeling. And the journal is set up that if they can't write, they can draw or doodle. Or so it's something that you can, as a parent, say, okay, how did that feel in your body? If it had a color, what color would it be? if it was a shape, what shape would it be? So and the kids get so creative about it that you get a really good picture of your child's thought process and what they're actually going through without even saying it. You'll see, like, if this emotion felt pointy, it's probably because it was a sharp one, you know what I mean? So if it was shaped like a sword, that one hurt your child. Let's just so and it teaches us to be able to identify those in us as well, because sometimes we're so closed off or disconnected from our own emotions or our own feelings that it helps us to visualize everything that's happening inside of us. So it is very helpful.
I love this. I think I'm just so grateful that you're doing this work and bringing this into the world and creating these resources for us because it is difficult and we aren't taught these things naturally. Like no one is teaching us these things. So for you to be the one to bring it forward and have a resource for people is just so important. So kudos to you and the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I also want to talk about the different areas of life. Is
Mhm.
this something that's included in the journal or is this just something that you work with parents on?
That's something I work with the parents. I don't want to overload parents when it comes to journeys. So focusing on the positive, sometimes it's a split second. You have to find it. I don't want you to start thinking about your finances and your workspace. But I always start with the work that I do, whether it is with parents or because I do also work with the workforce and the professionals and specialists and CEOs on. I always start with values. What's important to you? What are the non-negotiables in your life, and let's set those boundaries around it. So the eight area, the nine. I just added a ninth one this time. I added the digital world because that has a huge impact on our values lately. So I added that this year. So in the values course, we go about finding your actual core values and not the ones you inherited or that you were passed down, you grew up with, to see if they really are yours. What's that definition for you? What do they mean to you? And what does that look like in everyday? So I always use as an example, my example, let's say family was one of my family values. There was a point just before my burnout when I was working 70 hours a week. So family value was not aligned with my lifestyle at that point because I was never with my family. By the time I got home, the kids were already sleeping, and then in the morning it was just a rush to get them to school. So that takes a toll, and I know for many parents that's their reality as well. So how is it showing up in your life? Because when you start feeling off, it's often because your values or your life is not aligned with your values. It's the same at work. You could have started a new job. You're all excited. You're all, everything is going great. And all of a sudden in the morning, you're just like, oh, can I be sick this morning? And and then, your coworkers are starting to get to you. And it's often it's just because there's something off with your values. So in the values course, I go through the 8 areas of your life. And one of them, of course, is your personal business. And then we go into financial, I go into spiritual, no matter what that means to you, uh, and also your physical. When I say physical, it's your physical space, not your body. So, if respect is one of your values, well, if your house is cluttered, you're not respecting your space. How does your glove compartment look like? How does the garage? We all have that one room or closet where things gets tossed around when there's company coming over and we need to do a quick cleanup. That junk drawer, so that your workspace, your office, is it giving you space to breathe and to think and to create? So the finances, of course, if you're overspending, you're not respecting yourself in the finance world. So that it does add up and it does take a toll. So this is where I work with. I didn't name all 9 of them, but it gives you a good aspect of how everything that I do is transferable to every aspect of your life. So we can work on that so you feel like you're actually in control of your life, or you can take control. And again, something you can pass on to your child and make their lives just a little easier. Because like you said, we're not taught this stuff. So we need to be able to arm our kids with the right tools to be
Yeah.
able to move forward with a little bit less stress than we did.
That's always the goal, right? And
Mhm.
unfortunately, well, or fortunately, the way that you look at it, we're the ones who have to do the work. And so, I mean, unfortunately, that there's work to do, but fortunately, that we're giving ourselves the skills as well as we're learning to teach the kids, which is so cool. I
Yeah.
love this idea of the different areas of life. I actually have in my planner a life wheel with 8 different areas, and I'm sure they're like similar to the ones you do, where people at the
Yeah.
beginning of each month will kind of like fill in the piece of the pie and like, how am I doing? Right? It's so important to make sure that we're checking in with ourselves on, a fairly regular basis. Like, where are things at? Because things change so frequently. So being aware that there are different facets of life, because we can get so like laser focused on one area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And
It's such a great visual. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that diagram, whatever those 8 or 9 areas are, it really gives you a visual because it's never going to be level all the way through, So there's sometimes where work will require more out of you, and you already know this. So it's just to readjust the other areas so that you're not neglecting them. Because, like you say, after a while, your work, 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 and then there's no more time with the family, and there's no more time for your health and self-care. So it's just to recalibrate. And I love that you do that every month because, yeah, things are changing so fast lately. We
oh my
do
God.
need to, it's not something you do quarterly. You're going to want to do this regularly enough to,
Yeah.
uh, to, to recalibrate. I love that.
Yeah. Sort of keep your finger on your own pulse of like what's
Yes.
going on, right?
Yeah.
Um, Before we wrap up, I want to make sure that people know about your quiz. Can you tell us
Mhm.
about that? Because that sounds very interesting and very helpful.
It's a quiz that I started as I do a lot of, because I work with my neurodivergent children, I often try to kind of change the tone in traditional classrooms where it's let's teach the way the children learn as opposed to have the children learn the way we teach. And it's something that once it's in place, it's so much easier for the teachers because the teachers are spread thin as well, and they're going through their stuff. So it is a quiz to show you, and I work through play. Whether you're an adult or a child, we're going to play because this is when your natural learning style comes out the best. And so the quiz will ask some very easy questions on how you prefer if you have to handle a certain situation, how would you handle it? And at the end of that is a very brief quiz. I can go in deeper with it later on if you wanted to know more about it, but it'll give you a really good picture of how it is that your brain absorbs new information. So for children, this is great because then you'll be able to know that if my child is kinesthetic learner, they're gonna need to move. They're gonna need to get their hands into it. They're gonna be touching math before they start learning math. So how can I change the house? Where they to help with homework? How can we create a healthy learning environment in class? How can I support the teacher to say, okay, my child's gonna need to move. So how can we set that up in a way that it's not going to disrupt the rest of the class, right? So, or if you have a solitary learner that needs to be in their own little space. So how can we set up it? That's hard in a classroom, but where can we set out some spaces where it's not as busy, not as loud, so that the child, can we do groups of 2 instead of groups of 4 so that the child feels comfortable? But it works for adults as well. It will help you. This is why I pivoted towards adults because I was doing the work with the kids and the parents were like, if I would have known this back in school, this would have helped me so much. And I have grandparents saying the same thing. I could have been able to help my kids, instead of punishing them for something that they were not responsible for. So I work with learning styles like most people will work with personality traits. You have a dominant one, you have some secondary ones. And so we're going to work on it to say, how can you adjust? How can you study when you're in high school and that? How can you actually study so that you can retain the information for your tests and your exams? So it is available. I would say because it's a form itself. If people contact me through email, I could send them the link to do the quick quiz, and then if they want more information on the individual learning styles, I also have videos on YouTube to show. Okay, now that you know how your child learns, what can you do at home to enhance the learning experience? So there's some guidance there as well.
That feels so supportive. Is there a particular like way that we could get that to our teachers? Like, do you work with people to get it to in classrooms? Like, what does that look
Yeah.
like?
It's a bit more challenging in classrooms because of the rules and regulations that they have their policies as well. So I do work often is because there is probably a handful of neurodivergent children. And most of the time now it's teacher led. So teachers will come to me and say, okay, I am not able to get the support that I need. What else can I do? So
Mm.
yes, I do that. I do workshops. So for PD days, when the professional development days where the teachers are in, I can do some workshops. I work with work-life balance as well. So how do we stay less reactive in class and less reactive at home? And but yeah, I do work. It's mostly one-on-one now. I would be a dream for me to be able to get that into the schools, just to make life so much easier for the teachers and to create that healthy relationship between teachers and parents as well, so that they are working on the same team to help the child. At the end of the day, it is the child that we're focusing on, and that's what my book is on as well, is put the focus back on the child so that they can thrive, that they can succeed in life.
I love it. There are so many resources and supports that you offer. What is the best place for people to go to find you, to work with you, to learn more? Like, where do you like to show up online and how do you like to connect with people?
I think for me, the most effective way is through LinkedIn, just because I showcase some of the work that I do there, but it's a lot easier as well to get a hold of me. You can get my email there. If you want to get practical, the YouTube channel is definitely one. That's Danielle C Baker. And you will find there's in the playlists some different ways that can more resonate with you. This is where the podcast is as well. So there's some topics there. There's a teacher's corner there as well to help us say, okay, this is how you can teach a child who has these challenges, so that I'm continuously putting videos on there as well. And since science was my first love, I do have some science experiments or demonstrations you can do with the kids in class or at home if you don't mind getting messy, because I love getting messy. I am a kinesthetic learner, so it's like, let's get our hands in there. So yeah, so if you want practical visual support there, the YouTube channel is the best one. And LinkedIn, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. But if you are serious about getting the additional support and help, then LinkedIn and through email will be the best one. My website, of course, beingconnected.ca. You'll see more there as well.
Okay. I'm going to make sure, of course, all of that is in the show notes because I think there's going to be a lot of listeners who are recognizing the need for
Yeah.
this in their own lives. And guys, if you're listening and you know a teacher, please send this episode to the teacher so that they are aware that this type of support exists. You know, it doesn't necessarily, it's not limited to any school board or country, or like, it doesn't matter where you are. If you know a teacher or if you are a teacher, please share this with your teacher friends because this is great. And share this with all parents, actually. Just share this episode. I think there is so much really good stuff in here that people need to know or at least get thinking about. Danielle, thank you so much for being on Energy and Hours today. It's been a real pleasure being able to pick your brain and hear about all of the things that you're doing and how you're supporting parents and kids. And it's really a gift, the things that you are bringing to the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you for having me on. I hope it did help some parents, and always here to help. Always happy to help.
That's awesome. And everyone, please also let us know what landed, like what resonated from this episode. What was something that you were like, oh, aha, this is the thing. And we always like to hear because we're talking to you,
Mhm.
but we can't hear back from you unless you reach out. Like you're hearing from us on your earbuds or whatever. But we really would love to hear back from you. So um, let us know what resonated. And until next week, keep on growing like a mother.